On today's episode, we'll learn about how if you buy coffee, you have no right to complain about gas prices. Learn that men being bigger and stronger than women is just a cherished belief among men who like to cry. Analyze why NPR is the pinnacle of intelligent radio. Learn about how Kavanaugh wasn't actually treated all that poorly during his hearings. And finally, we'll look at some boomercons who can't tell reality from a Babylon Bee article. This is Cringe Posts. Hey friends, welcome to this episode of the Cringe Post podcast. This is the podcast where we gather the cringiest political and cultural takes that you see in your feed and we see in our feed, and we break down where they went wrong and point out some of the underlying assumptions and have a bit of fun along the way. My name's Britt, and I'm here with my co-host Donnie. Before we hop into some of these cringe posts, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our page and podcast. It really helps us out and helps us get our message of anti-cringe out into the world. Also, if you are listening to this podcast, we have a show companion if you go to cringepost.com, so you can actually see all the different memes or pictures or the actual posts as we go through these and as you're listening. Before we get started at poking fun at other people and kind of revealing other people's cringe takes, we like to take kind of stock of our own and reflect on different things that we've posted that might be a little bit cringy, just to show that people can actually grow out of their cringe post ways. And today we're going to poke some fun at my co-host Donald Kimball here, and he has a post from May of 2012, and it's a tweet that says hashtag replace film titles with bacon, the bacon redemption. What are
is
you
clever
referencing?
about that? Instead of the Shawshank Redemption, there's no pun. There's nothing that makes that funny or better. It's a stupid trend to hop on if you don't have something witty to say. Why? There's nothing deep here. I just was scrolling through my old post to find something, and I saw this, and I thought, what were you thinking, Past Donald? Why did you feel the need to put your stupid, unimportant, not clever little tweet out there? What's wrong with you, dude?
I wonder I remember this happening, and I can't remember what were good ones. Obviously, because there probably weren't very many good ones to replace film titles with bacon. Like, I'm Googling right now. There's Inglorious Bacon. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. That's about it.
I can't think of any movies that have like police in the title, but you could go the edgy route there, replace
there's Beauty and the Bacon. It's a little funny.
Yeah.
A
little alliteration for you. But I mean, it's so funny because I think of myself as someone who tends to avoid stupid trends like this, but obviously we all fell for them at some point. And I don't know, when I do these kinds of trends in the past, I would at least hope that I would have something to contribute that was not just like saying something for the sake of saying anything.
Maybe you've just seen that movie and you're like, I want to demonstrate. That's in line with a lot of the past cringe posts, like demonstrating your competency and your how broad your art tastes are.
You want to know what's worse? I've never seen that movie.
Oh
no! But
no,
I'll bet you anything. You know what? You saying that? I bet you anything. I looked up like best movies of all time or something through a list.
Oh my! That one makes it on there. I haven't seen it either, but I have looked up best movies of all time lists, and that is one of them. Or maybe it's like the best movies to stream. But yeah, that one makes it on there quite a bit when people talk about movies.
Yeah, it's a highly acclaimed film. I probably would like it if I'd see. I just haven't. I'm not a huge movie guy in general, but I'm guessing I just looked up top-rated movies to try to find something and thought, oh, this one would work, I guess. Or more like, I probably looked up that list and then tried to find one that wasn't already tweeted by someone else. But again, it's such a nothing. Like, why would I?
Yeah.
This tweet is the problem with social media, in that anyone's voice is amplified, which is a good thing, but also it means that people like me think we should say something when clearly we don't need to, and all you're doing is gumming up the airwaves.
And that is kind of the problem. It's like you feel like you have to do something, right?
Yeah.
And feeling like you have to do something causes you to put out stuff that is garbage and unnecessary. And I have no doubt. I mean, the reason I have no doubt that you probably Googled this list and then did it is because that's something I would have done back in 2012, right? So, yeah, that's hilarious, man.
Yeah. All right.
What's funny is these trends still happen.
Oh, they definitely do. Well, and the interesting thing is, I think generationally, you will see trends like, oh, we did this kind of thing, but in a different way, as boomers to millennials, like my dad, he used to edit interviews and things like that using cassette tapes and edit them to say funny things. And then when I was a kid, I would do that sometimes with Audacity, right? And it was like, oh man, I'm doing the same thing just in a completely different way. But it feels like a lot of the trends that millennials are doing, Zoomers and the next generation even is doing in the exact same way, just because it's so accessible. So like these trends, like replace film titles with bacon, probably will come up again in a year or two, and nothing will change except all the millennials will be like, that's old. We already did that.
Yep. I've kind of on that point, and you and I were just talking about, like, I've been out, folks, for a bit. I've been traveling Greece and Portugal with my wife, and in Portugal they've got this musical art that's really old called fado, which is basically like, it's kind of like really classical guitar and kind of a little bit more classical style singing, but the art of it is it's kind of all throughout Portugal, and it's it's literally a protected art there. But it's about, because Portugal's kind of a seafaring civilization. It's these women would sing songs about men leaving and coming back, and all these different things. And I was reading through the lyrics, and I was like, man, this is just like 400-year-old emo music, right? Like, it's really emotional. It's kind of like over the top, and it's very, very stylized to be emotional. And yes, okay, like the actual classical guitar work in it is a lot better than most emo songs you'll ever see. But the art of expressing yourself emotionally, and teenagers and young people expressing a whole musical style about angsty youth and love and all that stuff, it's common in every single generation, right? And it's probably embarrassing. I'm sure the people that were coming into it when that art was first coming out were like, oh, this is kind of cringy, but that's just how it goes, right? Now we look back on it as a classical, and it's a protected art.
So what you're saying is in like 400 years, people are going to listen to My Chemical Romance and be like, wow, this is really classical. This is fine art.
You never know, man. I mean, they freaking passed a law in Portugal to protect that there's only certain ways you can play fado. So not that you and I like that kind of thing, but
that's weird.
It's really weird. All right, moving on to other people's cringes. We've got a meme here. And again, for those listening, if you want to check out this meme, just go to cringepost.com and check out the visual show companion. But this meme, it's a picture of a gas machine and then a Starbucks cup. And it says, the national average for a gallon of gas is $4.17. A gallon of Starbucks coffee costs $16.80. Just saying. Obviously in reference to the fact that we're paying a lot of money for the Ukraine crisis and all the sanctions that we're putting on Russia. I just can't understand. You see this all over the place, and it's really reminiscent of the folks saying, well, like, it's okay if we pay a little bit more in gas. I think that's the price for securing freedom in Ukraine. It's like, okay, guys, like, we didn't have to. You can still support people in Ukraine, keeping their land or doing whatever they're going to do, or fighting for the freedom or not dying, and also be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do things that, one, are not going to help the situation in Ukraine and make it worse, and then two, make everything worse here at home. The same people who are the supposed champions of the lower class are now saying, look, just go buy an electric car, or it's okay that gas is $1.50 more expensive per gallon. It's like, that's actually a pretty significant deal. I just filled up my gas tank yesterday, and it was over $100 for a 15-gallon tank, right? And it's like, oh, okay, $5 and whatever cents that is. It's like, that's a pretty big deal for anyone that is not. What was it? I think it was the NPR article or New York Times. If you're making under $300,000, basically anyone making under $300,000, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, well, it's. For the first thing I'll say too is also the people who are saying it's worth it to pay for the right to do the right thing to support Ukraine. Gas prices were on the increase prior to the whole Russia-Ukraine. They are getting exacerbated, absolutely. But let's not kid ourselves and pretend that this wasn't a trend prior to the Ukraine crisis as well. But second, what a weird equivalent. It's like this is a repackaged version of the just don't buy avocado toast and you'll be able to afford a house, where again there might be some wisdom in that. In like, for instance, you could derive some wisdom from this in that you can cut your luxury Starbucks habit if you need to afford gas. But the flippant way that it's postured, it's really a false equivalence in many ways. For one thing,
Yes.
just saying, as though that's what anyone's complaining about. Like, oh man, I'm really upset I have to give up my Starbucks. No, it's like this is an everyday fact of life. And then the gallon of Starbucks coffee costing $16.80. Like, think about that from any kind of a rational perspective. A gallon of gas does not fill up anyone's tank. A gallon of Starbucks coffee is like, if you're getting like 12-ounce drinks, that's like almost like 10 and a half or 11 cups of coffee, which you're usually having a cup of coffee from Starbucks or whatever. So it's like such a weird equivalence to make where, okay, so you have to, if you want to equal everything out, let's, take it so that you're comparing apples to oranges here. You have to multiply the gallon of gas price by like anywhere from whatever, I don't know what the average tank size is, but let's say like 12 gallons. So you have to multiply that times 12, and then you have to say, how often do you need that gallon of, or 12 gallons of gas versus how often do you need a gallon of Starbucks coffee? I mean, it's just again, it's one of those memes where they take the numbers that they want to take, so that they can illustrate a very nonsensical point for impact. So they're showing the average of a single gallon of gas, and then they're showing you the cost of a gallon of Starbucks coffee, which is an inane amount to measure anything by, and they're two things that are not related at all. I mean, like by this logic, I want to go up to the meme maker and, let's say I'm running a store and they're coming to buy like a loaf of bread, and I'm going to say like, that'll be $20. Like, what are you talking about, dude? And it's like, hey, a starter home in Washington State costs $400,000. This loaf of bread only costs $20. Just saying. It's like, things cost different amounts. What is your point? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think about, maybe I'm not the biggest person that drinks Starbucks or coffee out or whatever, but it's like, when I do go out, maybe I get a 12-ounce coffee, and let's say maybe I do it once a week, after church or something like that, which would be, I think that's pretty consistent. That's like, a quarter or half a gallon or whatever it is, per month. Right?
Yeah.
So, whereas with gas, I fill up maybe twice a month, right? And it's so it's you're totally right in the false equivalency there. And it's just what a weird way to make a point,
Right.
And it's not even a good point to make.
Well, and the other aspect that you hit on where, they're like telling you just buy an electric vehicle and that's just not economically feasible. This also strikes me as, I don't like using the vernacular of sort of the woke progressive, classist, pit everyone into different groups against each other. But you can see from that perspective, this would be a really classist meme. And I think it's more of just sort of, rather than it being classist, I think it's probably more just ignorant, is my guess, of the person not really understanding things like luxury Starbucks every day or even every week is not necessarily something that people who are the most affected by the increase in gas prices are dealing with. Now, there's a subset of people like, in the middle class where there's a pretty good cross-section between uses decent amount of gas, drinks decent amount of coffee, kind of correlates a little bit. Again, not really, but let's say. But the people that this really hurts the most are like people like truckers who, one, when they're drinking coffee, it's not like this little luxury thing that they're doing every day for the office. They're drinking coffee because they need to stay awake because they're on the road for long periods of time. It's almost a work expense for them. And so the price of Starbucks coffee being what it is and gas being what it even, more expensive. It's not like a just cut out the coffee. It's like those things kind of go hand in hand in many ways. And again, the people who are most disproportionately impacted besides truckers are generally people who are not able to work from home. So they're going to be driving more and probably already don't spend that money on Starbucks.
Yes, and what people don't realize is that, that's the irony of this meme, is that the normal goods and services you get, right? We run on a 90-day food supply. And so food constantly has to be being moved all around the country using trucks and airplanes and ships that all run on fuel, right? So when the cost of fuel goes up, the cost of normal goods has to, like, when that cost is transferred to you, the consumer, right? Like the company's not just going to eat it and lose money. In order for them to keep running, they have to transfer that cost to you. So, ironically, the gallon of Starbucks coffee, if fuel was, $2 and whatever cents it was on average, might not be $16.80 a gallon, So this meme is kind of, it will always work for them. It's a circular logic reference in your Excel sheet, because when you increase the $4.17 up, it also increases the cost of the Starbucks up, right? And that's people don't understand that's, kind of similar, like, there's that documentary called The Commanding Heights, where it's like, hey, when government controls the commanding heights of industry, steel, fuel, grain production, they can kind of basically control all aspects and prices throughout the, the entire economy. And how that's a bad thing. That's what that documentary points out. But, fuel is a commanding height, right? Like, its price determines basically the price of everything else in your economy, and all the way from, the bread that you buy at the store to whether you can actually go on a trip or anything like that.
Agreed.
All right, moving on to our next one. This lady, do you know this person's handle? Because they're verified, but it kind of got cut off. It's Judy.
It looks like, either Jude or Judy Doyle.
Oh, Jude Doyle. Yep, Judy Doyle.
Yeah.
Jude Doyle. So she tweets out, "Men are just big," quote, "men are just bigger and stronger," unquote, "is a deeply cherished belief amongst the kind of man I have routinely reduced to tears by, like, accurately describing his actions." And then she posted up a follow reply to that tweet. Sounds like a bunch of dudes who are crying would say. And she has some tweets from guys basically saying, like, hey, like, men are bigger and stronger, and just because we cry, that doesn't mean, you can't measure that in like science and all this different stuff, which I can't actually really see much of this stuff, like the data they posted, but go for it.
Well,
go for it.
Yeah, the point, the tweets themselves aside, I think the tweets make some fine points, and I could have posted all of those, but like their point, the basic thing is they're pointing out, like, men being physically bigger and stronger has nothing to do with the ability of you to reduce men to tears. Like,
yes.
Those are completely unrelated metrics, for one, and two, the more important thing to emphasize for me, so, she screen caps those things and then says, "Wow, sounds like what a bunch of dudes who are crying would say." She's playing what I've come to refer, and maybe I've done something like this on Cringe Post before, because I do it everywhere when I see it. I think it's such a funny phrase. This is Schrodinger's douchebag. This is, you say something inflammatory, and then when people respond because you've said something inflammatory, you pull the "just chill, bro," or like, "Why are you getting upset? Why are you mad?" Which is, it's like saying, men who are bigger and stronger isn't true. And if you think that, you're a stupid idiot. And then people respond, "No, it is true, and you're not a stupid idiot." Look at all these stupid idiots. It's a total cheap tactic that gets you out of addressing anything that anyone who replies to you is saying. And I've seen this as a critique, this kind of critique coming from people on the right a lot of the times, who will say, "Wow, look at all these people attacking someone for saying something brave and bold." I've seen this critique leveled where they're like, they only care about free speech for the person who has a platform, not for anyone who wants to reply and call out, eccentric or controversial speech. They only want to protect controversial speech, not the people who want to say things back to that person. But that critique applies here, where this person says something, makes an objectively false claim, and then says, "Anyone who disagrees with me is a stupid, stinky poo-poo head." And then people are like, "Well, no, your claims don't make sense." And, "Look, stinky, stupid poo-poo head." And you don't have to engage with any of the talk. It's so stupid. And a great example of why a lot of these cultural wedge issues, like the transsexual debate with the whole Leah Thompson thing going on. Yeah. Why you, even if you are trying to have good faith debate about these issues, they're ultimately just distractions that you can't really get anything done, because good faith conversations just don't happen about it. People just argue in bad faith like this, and you just end up running around in circles.
It's the whole Leah Thomas thing has been just such a nice, like, source of cringe posts. Like, I've got so many on my phone I'm excited for us to go through, but kind of like people talking about, like, "Ooh, men are just bigger and stronger" is a deeply cherished belief, as if it's not, like, rooted in science. It's just like, it's like, no, by all all metrics that you can actually measure, right? Like men are bigger and stronger in every single way. I saw this one post someone did, lovely person, but for whatever reason they decided to say this, and they're like, "Oh well, when Leah Thomas, beat the other women in the race, she only beat them by I think it was 1.75 seconds. Like that's not that much. It's like, dude, in a race at like the highest levels, like 1.75 seconds is like eternity, right? Like I looked up, cause I'm really familiar with swimming, but I'm familiar with like running and like the 100-meter dash, right? Like in running, like the world record for a woman is like 9.43 seconds or something like that, or 10.4 seconds or something like that. And the men's record is like 9 seconds, right? And it's like, that's 1.4 second difference. But the difference between those two is that if you're the woman world record holder for the 100-meter dash, you don't even break the top 10,000 men in terms of their time in the whole country for that. It's like, that's how big a difference, 1.4 seconds is. And so people just will say these things without any like context or any subject matter, expertise on the actual, sport that they're talking about. It also reminds me of, I think back in 2013, they had Fallon Fox was a UFC fighter that had transitioned from male to female, just totally brutalizing women, right? And Joe Rogan talked about, he's like, hey, dude, like men are bigger. They've got bigger bone structure. They've got all the, regardless of whether she transitioned a year or two ago, like she has, 20 years of testosterone in her body that have fueled her development. And that's the reason she's just destroying people, right? And it's like, it's not a cherished belief. That's what really bugged me about her first tweet. It's like, no, this is an actual thing. And yeah, there are women that are stronger than me. There are women that could beat me up, right? But when you put the strongest man versus the strongest woman in an arena, the man is always going to be stronger because it's a biological reality, right? That man is, it reminds me of, do you know that the rapper Zuby? Yeah, and
Yes,
he beats the I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, but he did a deadlift where he identified as a woman and then he deadlifted, I can't remember how much it was like 475 pounds or something like that. And he's like, oh, I just beat the woman's world record for deadlift, it's obvious, right, that men are built differently. And to deny that is just it's for the party of the science trademark is pretty interesting.
Yeah, the other example, I think it was brought up in the replies here, was when Serena Williams, the tennis player, and there was one other one I don't remember.
That's a classic.
It was her sister maybe or something. I think it was Serena Williams' sister. They said that they couldn't, they could be any man outside the top 200, and so then the 203rd ranked men's tennis player said, okay, I'll challenge you. And he beat them both like 5-0, 5-1, 6-2, something like that. Like,
in the same day.
Yeah, in the same day. And so, again, it's not a knock. Like Serena and Venus Williams are impressive women. They are doing incredible things. I certainly can't do what they do because they're trained. They're built that way. But, because they've trained for that. But they're not biologically built the same as men. There are just these structural differences that seem to more and more be getting taken down. And again, going back to this cringe post, I have to say another thing that's really funny about it is that generally speaking, people on the left are more, and I don't necessarily even disagree with this assessment, they're more willing and desiring to emphasize that men should be in touch with their emotions and it should be okay for a man to cry, that kind of thing. And with some, asterisk, I suppose I would say I agree. I don't necessarily always agree to the exact extremities they would take to, and I do think that there's certain emotional guardrails you should put up for certain reasons, but that's a whole different topic. But that being said, then this person who I'm gonna take a really, really stretch of a guess and say that they're on the left is now mocking the idea of men crying, being reduced to tears from this. And so it's really funny because you can tell this person doesn't really sincerely believe a lot of the compassionate talk that these people try to posture themselves as exhibiting. And if you're mocking someone to be like, oh, I can reduce you to tears, and then the next minute say, well, it should be okay for men to cry. And it's like, I don't know if I'm really believing how genuinely you think that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of the common thread through a lot of these cringe posts that we see is that it's not actually based on a principle that they hold, right? It's all based on like, I have an agenda or I want to have power, and so I'm going to use whatever means I can, to bludgeon you, whether even if it means that I'm going to be hypocritical, the next hour and have something different. Like one of our favorite pages, Defiant L's, right? Where they just show people posting one thing one day and another thing the other day. And I think that's a pretty common trait of what makes something cringe.
Yes, I agree.
All right, moving on. Moving on to our next one. I think we can out this person, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. So David Bowes, and who's he the president of again?
He's the president of Cato.
David Bowes, the
Cato
president
Institute.
of the Cato Institute, writes I can't believe that he's the president of the Cato Institute. Okay, On my morning drive, my NPR station went to a pledge break, so I switched to a conservative talk radio. Yikes, what a cesspool. Is there no market for intelligent, thoughtful radio news or commentary presented by people with conservative or libertarian perspectives? Then again, maybe there's no market for intelligent, thoughtful liberal radio, which is why NPR is taxpayer subsidized. Oh my gosh, dude. This reminds me of, and I know we've talked about it before, but we had a professor in college who taught communications. And on the first day of class, she was kind of laying out like, hey, what sources you're allowed to use because you can't use, biased sources. And she said, sources like NPR, that's an unbiased source that you can use, when writing a paper. It just reminded me of that. I can't believe this is the president of the Cato Institute, though, dude. That's wild.
I mean, here's the maximum kudos I can give him for this post is that he's not pretending that NPR is unbiased, unlike your comms professor. He does say liberal radio, so he does at least identify them as liberal. But yeah, this is rough. To think NPR is intelligent, thoughtful liberal radio it betrays a lot to me about what Cato type libertarians care about. And that's not to say that Cato has never done anything good or that a lot of their research or things that they've done aren't good and beneficial. As much as I rag on Cato for certain things, they are awesome in certain particular areas with policy recommendations and nitty-gritty papers and things like that, which is an aspect of the liberty movement that I think needs to exist. But the problem is there's so many times that there are drawbacks to that, and they end up sort of taking 2 steps backward while putting 1 step forward. And to me, saying that, showing that like the tone of NPR is what counts them as intelligent, thoughtful liberal radio, I think that's where you say, oh, it's about the tone police. It's about if you present with a nice filter and you tout the government talking line, but you do it in a way where you use your NPR voice and you talk about issues in a sort of soft-spoken tone. And today we're going to talk to Britt, and he's going to tell us why it's okay to murder Ukrainians and Russians abroad as long as they're brown and a brown president is doing it. That kind of thing. That's what they care about, not anything of the actual substantive matter. Because really, when you're listening to NPR, most of the time, it's really not intelligent. It sounds like it's intelligent. They'll do interviews with people who speak from, quote unquote authority, but any reasonable amount of research and not buying into the government touted state line, you can realize, oh wait, this is literally just propaganda.
We didn't we have an NPR piece? We had that recently. We must have. I can't remember what it was. It was ridiculous though. Obviously because it made it on our show and everything. Part of the reason I can't believe this guy is the president of Cato, because that's a libertarian.
Yes.
It's supposed to be. I mean, what he's inferring is that you can't have a market for intelligent things unless the government subsidizes it.
Right.
I mean, that's what I'm gathering from it. And it's when I read it, I thought, this can't be true. It can't be right. But I don't know, David Bowes. Like, do you think Cato is intelligent and thoughtful? And it's not subsidized, right?
Yeah.
They don't have any radio programs or anything. But you know what I'm trying to say, right? Like the market does pay for those types of things. just because it's not presented in the way that you would like it, right? Or maybe you're not looking towards it, right? I don't know much about David Boaz or like Tom Woods or Dave Smith or his thoughts on any of those guys, but it's like, those are pretty good shows. Those are pretty good shows.
I think he would probably disagree with you on that. Would be my guess. That's the kind of I don't think they've had good interactions in the past, is what I'll say.
They didn't sign the Nazi pledge, right? So that's
exactly. That's the biggest problem here. But yeah, the idea, even just sort of, I don't know, this idea that the right conservative talk. I mean, also just the idea of saying like your one experience from listening to conservative talk radio was a cesspool. It's like, I don't necessarily disagree in that.
Same.
There's a lot of conservative talk radio out there that's garbage, but you're also taking one probably random local conservative channel, or maybe it's like a national syndicated one, and then you're projecting the entire, state of something to that. It's like, I don't know, if I it's like me looking at David Boaz and saying, well, if this is the kind of commentary that comes out of Cato, they've literally never put out anything good. And it's like, no, that's an unfair thing to say, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
I found the NPR one that we did. This was on episode 45, and NPR tweeted out the article on which skin color emoji you should use to not be racist.
That is the kind of thing that the market needs taxpayers subsidized.
That is the NPR, thoughtful and intelligent liberal radio right there.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Oh my gosh, yeah, I would call that a cesspool myself.
Yeah, me too. Yep. Plug in episode 45. Go check it out if you haven't. All right, move on to our next post from another independent news organization, kind of. The Washington Post, where democracy does not die in darkness. The Post view, it's an opinion article, and the headline writes, Republicans boast they have not pulled a Kavanaugh. In fact, they've treated Jackson worse. Of course, referencing the Supreme Court nomination hearings for Miss Jackson. And yeah, man, I mean, they're definitely treating Jackson worse. They've pulled out a bunch of unsubstantiated claims that she, was raping people and dragged her family and children through the mud and put them in the public spotlight. And it's like, oh no, they're not doing any of that. Even though they said they would, the thing is, like, I think it's all a joke, right? And I think it's all dumb and stupid. And I hate that this is even a process in our country. But they promised me that they would do the same to the Democrats that the Democrats did to them. And I was very much looking forward to seeing what they would pull out. But the best they can do is try and get her on some weird technicality about child pornography. It's kind of weird. And critical race theory. Ooh.
I will say they've treated her worse because they've asked her a really hardball question like, what is a woman?
Yeah. She's not a biologist, though. She can't answer that.
This whole, like you're saying, this whole thing is just such a clown show. And it's funny because I saw, I think it was Ben Sass from Nebraska, who's sort of a conservative guy. He's like, this is why there should be no news cameras during this process. Like, it shouldn't be publicized. And I was like, yeah, but then also, then you wouldn't know the kinds of shady dealings that do get back down there, where they all sort of,
so just do away with the whole thing.
Shake hands. Yeah, and I'm like, so really, it's a lose-lose. And you're like, how do you solve that? Oh, I know. Let's get rid of it to begin with.
Yes.
Because if your problem is that the system you have is broken if the lights are turned on, because they're going to try to use it for campaign garbage and donations and making headlines, then that doesn't function. And if it doesn't work when you turn out the lights because there will be corruption and shady dealings behind the scenes, then you have a system that in both binary of lights on, lights off does not work. The system doesn't work. Okay? Like that's all there is to it. And the fact that, people are bickering up, I mean, just that the cognitive dissonance that the editorial board has to write to even think that the clown show that's going on right now, which is goofy, it is wacky, it is childish, it's silly, it's embarrassing for the Republicans, and it's embarrassing for Jackson. I mean, in a sense, I think she's playing her cards correctly, where she won't answer because she knows that it will upset her, the people she needs to approve of her. I don't think she's incapable of answering what's a woman. I think it's calculated, but it's embarrassing that she's not able to come up with an answer in front of, on a national stage of a very simple question. So the whole thing is it's ridiculous. And then you have people who are even, like making the case that this goofy, wacky thing is anywhere remotely as evil as what they did to Kavanaugh, who I don't like. Kavanaugh is not.
He sucks. He
was
sucks.
97% voted the same as Merrick Garland when they served on the same court together. He's not a conservative hero. I don't think that he's done very many good decisions. And yet,
I think he voted for the vaccine mandate for healthcare workers.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. Yes. Yeah. He was he upheld that part of Biden's mandate.
I think both he and Barrett, I believe, actually.
Did
if I'm
Barrett?
not mistaken.
Oh my gosh, that would be.
I want to say there were only 3 dissents, and I think it was Alito, Thomas, and Gorsuch. But I could be mistaken there. Anyway, but point being, like, Kavanaugh was not great. I don't like him, but what they did to him was evil. It was flat out,
and then
wrong.
I was telling someone about this. I was like, yeah, you remember, like, I think it was like 6 women or whatever came out. And then even one of the women, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she said that, like, he was part of, like, a group on campus that would gang rape people. And then after she got disproven, she said, no, you're right. I had that wrong. Like, I was basically telling a misleading story about it. And no, there was no repercussions for her, no repercussions for the journalists that didn't, verify their story or check anything. It just was like, oh, bummer. It's like, oh, I don't know, man. Like, you kind of got to have a consequence if you're going to say something that outlandish about someone, because, like, that carries like crazy consequences if it is true. It carries crazy consequences when it's just said, right, about someone. So, there was actual damage done to Kavanaugh. The worst that happens to Jackson is there's some embarrassing videos about her not being able to answer, what a woman is online, right?
Yep.
Kavanagh's kids probably have to be homeschooled or go to a really selectively, chosen private school because, they'll probably get harassed no matter wherever they go, right? Like, there's nothing off limits to the left in terms of their quest to gain control and power. They will smear and hurt your children. They'll smear and hurt your loved ones, your family. It does not matter who they are. And yeah, the Republicans are spineless, so they're not going to do it, right? Which I was looking forward to both parties having to, kind of having to go at each other. But yeah, it's just, there's no way that Jackson has been treated worse, right? And if anything, right, like, Joe Biden set her up to be treated the way that she's being treated right now in a lot of the ways, because he said, hey, I'm assigning her, because I nominated her because she's a black woman. It's like, dude, you couldn't have set her up any worse for these hearings. Like, all these people are saying, oh, I can't believe these Republicans are saying this or that about her when she's got a CSV that is a mile long, of all of her different accomplishments. It's like, well, the person that chose her to be nominated didn't give a rip about her accomplishments. He only cared about her gender and her skin color. So, yeah, she's going to get asked questions about these things.
You see that the absolute, sort of master plan between the Democratic coalition of senators and then the media talking points talking about all the different aspects of how it's not only, it's not a token, it's based on her merit and it's historic. So they're like trying to say it's not because she's a black woman, but it's also because she's a black woman, but it's also because she's qualified. They're trying to play both sides of the fence. And I saw like this piece about, and again, just to show you the media's absolute bias here. The media was reporting about all these false, demonstrably fake allegations. Speaking of fake allegations, now the Hunter Biden laptop story is turning out to be true. I'm sure a bunch of those outlets that talked about why it was false news is going to come honest. Anyway, side note there. But so they're talking about all this slander against him. They're showing him in the unfavorable light when he like got really mad and responded and stuff. And they're like, wow, that temperament's not someone who belongs on the Supreme Court. All that kind of stuff. Again, another Schrodinger's douchebag moment there, where you accuse someone of being part of a gang rapist group, and then he gets mad, and you're like, huh, just chill, bro. Why are you so mad? Like, yeah, I wonder why. So you think all these things that happened to him, and then what you see from the reporting on, Miss Jackson is a picture of her daughter sitting behind her smiling. and talking about, we interviewed her daughter, thinking what she asked in those moments and how, how it felt to see her mom sitting in this position that was not designed for someone like her. And it's like, hello, for one thing, Clarence Thomas exists. He's on the court. Like, chill. But also, you're doing the whole, it's not about the fact that she's a black woman, but it's about the fact that she's a black woman and she's qualified. But and let's get a picture of her smiling daughter.
Clarence Thomas should identify as a woman right before Jackson is actually confirmed, because then she's only the second black woman to serve on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, who are they to tell him that he's not? Sorry, tell her that she's not a woman, right?
Yeah.
You can't say that he's, on average bigger and more well built.
That deeply cherished belief that men hold.
Oh, and you know what? Kavanaugh, I bet he cried when we called him a gang rapist. Wow, such a macho man now, huh? We're gonna
you do have to think about that, though.
Slander you in front of this national stage, and you're gonna cry about it.
Yeah, like you do have to think about that. Like, what an awful thing to go after, to call someone, like, without any substantiated claims, and then to also drag their kids, through it. And that's because they knew full well, right? They knew full well that that's what was going to happen to Kavanaugh's kids and all these things. They just didn't care. And, like, to me, that gives up the whole game, right? That, like we said earlier, it's not about the principle of, like, doing the right thing. And even if we disagree on how you get to the right thing, like, at least someone that wants to do the right thing, like, we can have a discussion and argue about how we get there. But these people, I don't know how you can share a country with them, right? When you don't even have the same basis of what the right thing is, or the right thing is just whatever gives me power, right, over you. That's not reconcilable. And I think the Kavanaugh hearings to me were when I realized that, like, this isn't going to work out, right? Like I don't like Kavanaugh. I don't like the Democrats. I don't like the Republicans. But if we can't agree on that, there are certain things that are off limits, or we can't agree on that the truth actually does matter when you're making a claim, and the only truth that matters is the truth that furthers my power. There's no way we can actually have a country or be together in this. We better break up, or else we're going to kill each other. And unfortunately, we haven't broken up yet. So we'll see what happens.
Ooh, we'll see.
All right, moving on to our last one of the day. So we have a not cringe post. We have a funny post by the Babylon Bee, RIP their Twitter account. But they posted a picture of like a passenger jet, holding some solar panels, an obvious like screen clipping of a solar panel, flying over a city that I don't think is Kiev or anywhere. It's just some random city from Google Images. And the title of their article is "John Kerry Orders Emergency Airdrop of Solar Panels to Ukraine to Offset Carbon Emissions." Pretty funny article title. What was really funny was all the conservative boomers that commented on this. And here's a sample of some of their comments. This one person writes, "Follow the money. It may sound like complete incompetent ridiculousness, but somewhere Dems are getting kickbacks from this, and someone's buddy that owns the solar panel company just got a big payday." And then someone replies, "You are 100% right." Another person writes, "That ought to fix everything then, laughing face." And then another person comments below that, "Sounds about right. Got dollar money out of their slush fund extorted from us." And then another person writes, "At this point, I don't think they care about their emissions, but need to connect it with climate change. Politicians never let a good tragedy go to waste." And then the cherry on top, this person, who obviously does not know what the Babylon Bee is, writes, "You can't make this stuff up." Actually, you can.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Does John Kerry even have a position in?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's in the administration. Still, maybe not. I don't know. He's so irrelevant. He's such a bumbling weirdo. No, I'm pretty sure he was appointed to something.
Oh yeah, he's the special presidential envoy for climate. Ooh.
Yeah.
So this would be something he would do, but he didn't do it.
This post, it to be fair, it wasn't on like this. These comments aren't from the Babylon Bees article, like posted to Facebook. it's from a Republican group in the county that shared the link. So the people who are following the Republican page are seeing it, not necessarily people who've liked the Babylon Bee. So that's why they, may not. But I mean, it's hilarious because on the one hand, just like, look at the image. I'm sorry. Look at the image. If your eyes are working, how can you remotely think that that's not fake? Like, it's so obviously corny, and all these comments. And the thing is, like, the sentiment of some of them isn't even wrong, but it's depressing how we've gotten to the point where people just buy anything that they read as gospel truth, even when it's
as long as it's against the right side of people.
Yeah,
right? Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And
because if this had been said, Trump ordered this, right? They would have been all for it, because it's maybe not the solar panels, but something else.
Right.
Some other.
Yeah, I mean, you could put something equally ridiculous there, like Trump orders, like, I don't know, Trump hotels to be built in there for Ukrainian refugees. And they're like, wow, look at his good heart, And it's like,
yeah,
really, Trump hotels being airlifted into the country. But it's also like our government's gotten to the point where people are not only buying it if it's on the other team, but like they just assume, like, of course it's doing something stupid like that. Like, of course it's that inept.
That's
or
kind of
incompetent
nice
or
in
corrupt,
some ways.
right?
That's kind of nice. Yeah, like that. What you were saying about the sentiment of these, I kind of appreciate it, right? Because it's like, I want people to be so skeptical of the government that they would believe they would do something this stupid, right? Like that makes me happy. But it's like, these people will fall for anything, and that's not good, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's why you have like the insanity that is the whole QAnon stuff. I haven't gone down the QAnon rabbit hole as to everything that they believe, but I have friends who, like, they're like, oh my gosh, my brother, who's into the QAnon conspiracies, like, unironically thinks that, like, Vladimir Putin is doing this as a way to, oh my goodness, I'm even going to see if I can find it, but like Vladimir Putin is doing this to fight against China, or something like that.
No, it reminds me of the who posted it. It was it was one of our very first episodes, and it was basically like, who was that congressperson or senator from South Carolina that he like vetoed some bill? I can't remember, but basically it was like 4D chess of, he vetoed this because
Richard Burr, he
yes,
was resigning.
Richard Burr.
He was resigning.
Oh, yes.
And then Laura Trump was potentially going to run, and he resigned so that she would like get the Trump base riled up or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. So it was this 4D chess move. Go for it.
Because he voted for impeachment. That's what it was. He voted for impeachment so that because he was planning on retiring, and that would rile up the Trump base and getting her to vote for Laura Trump or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, yes, and it was the same kind of Republican that commented on this. I think might have actually been in that Republican group that you mentioned, right?
Yeah, it actually probably was.
Yeah,
it probably was. Here's the QAnon theory that my friend's brother believes, that Xi Jinping is currently working behind the scenes to destroy the communist or the CCP, to destroy the Communist Party of China, because he's roughly allied with Putin, and both of Putin and Xi Jinping are against the Biden administration, and because of that, he's trying to slowly undermine the CCP in order to work better with Putin. I don't know. But like, these people unironically believe these insane theories, and they'll read something that, someone who is a sensationalist will put out with no evidence. They won't click the link. They'll read the headline, and then, oh my gosh, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of sad, is we, Jordan Peterson talks about, like, the foundation for a good society is a society that values the truth and doesn't lie, right? Like he's like, tell the truth, or at least just don't lie, right? If you can't tell the truth. And because of all the lying that our society does, and the total disregard for truth, like, everyone knows, like, that something fishy is going on, but like, no one can actually get to what the truth is, right? Like, you don't want to have anyone, no one needs. You don't have to have the whole population be an expert in geopolitical issues and have an economics degree to be able to function in society, right? Or to like tell this from that. But because we have had so much lies and so much deceit and so much destruction and so much just people like lying to grab power, like people that don't have that expertise are now, able to believe things like this, right? And that's what's so terrifying. Like we have a friend, and one of my friends, like one of their parents died, from COVID, and it's like this is a person that probably should have gone to the hospital, right, when they got sick with it, but they didn't because they believed, a lot of different things were going on in the hospital, and they believed they could take alternative medicine, to take care of it and all these different things. And it's really unfortunate. Like maybe they would have died anyways, but it's like, because all the waters were muddied with so much lying, like people that, one, shouldn't be educated on everything, and then two, don't have the time to do it, are not able to tell what is good or what's not, right? You can't actually get good sources on things. And so they believe whatever they're most predisposed to believe, which is, in a way, a good thing that the government is lying to you, but that doesn't actually get you any closer to the truth of what the matter is. And so things like this are, propagated throughout all of social media that John Kerry is, I'm sure one of these boomers went to their friends at a dinner and said, man, I saw this crazy article. Did you know we're airdropping solar panels on Ukraine? And then one of the friends who actually knows a little bit is like, no, we're not. Like, we're not doing that. And it's like everything is worse off.
Worse yet, someone else who's neutral hears that and says, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And they repeat it to someone else. And then that person's like, no, we're not. And he's like, no, I heard it from John. He's a doctor. He knows what he's talking about, right? Because like these people who believe this stuff, they're not idiots, right? They just lack discernment of the truth. And that's the problem.
They're not experts in this area of the world, right? But because this aspect of the world has been so covered with lies, like They aren't able to tell fact from fiction, to harken back to this other, this person writing, you can't make this stuff up. It's like, you're right. There have been more ridiculous things than this that have happened, in the past year. But this is not true, right? And it's just unfortunate all over the place. And until we value telling the truth, it's not going to get better, right? And that's the problem.
Yeah. Well, and the problem is then people, like you said, they retreat to their corners, and if it's skepticism of government, that's better. But like you said, to the one hand, that can be unfortunate when it gets to a ridiculous degree. But a lot of people's response is the opposite. They'll see all this stuff and they see such a dissonance of information that they're like, well, whatever this NPR tells me is probably going to be true then, or whatever the state line is that we have to pay more in gas to help out Ukrainian democracy because that's what Joe Biden told me.
Because then they see this example like, oh my gosh, like those Republicans, like they're just so stupid and like so susceptible to disinformation. That must be how they voted for Trump, right? Yep. Because the Russians spent $150,000 on ads for Trump, like that swayed 80 million people to vote for him. That's why he got elected. It's like no, like because of the lies, like now you can't actually get back to where like the actual source of truth is, right? You're so far removed on both sides of it and you can't actually engage with the world in a way that actually yields results. And it's a scary place to be in as a society.
Yeah. You end up with people who are either so prone to reading and buying anything that they read that even when you present them with the truth, it's just like 5% in this pool of, it's like putting like a tablespoon of salt in a swimming pool. It does nothing. It just dissolves in a mass of a million other things that aren't true. And so the truth has no real impact on them. Or you show the truth, and because it's not, on the other half, because it's not coming from this well-spoken, respectable outlet, they just assume it's one of the other millions things out there and won't take it. So you try to show someone antiwar.com and they're like, well, that's not CNN, so I'm not going to believe it.
And there are like the problem is like this is as ridiculous as telling someone, hey, like we did a coup on a democratically elected government in Eastern Europe by supporting a Nazi battalion, right? Like that sounds as crazy as John Kerry wanting to airdrop solar panels to offset emissions. the difference is that's true, right? And so how can you tell the difference between the two of them? And that's how why these people are having a problem. It's like, okay, please just go look up this article, paste it in Google, and you'll see that this is from the Babylon Bee. And if you go to their site, you'll see that it's clearly a satire site. That's all you got to do, right? And I guess that's what makes these responses so cringe, is it's just based off the headline, right? They don't actually read the article. They don't actually go do any, even just 20 seconds of investigation. They would know that, I shouldn't, propagate this information and in any other way other than for humor and satire. But like those things are happening. Like I told a friend, they're asking like, oh, do you really think like the government is going to experiment on us like with our health and everything with the vaccine? I was like, dude, like look up like Operation Sea Spray. Like if I told you that the government took an experimental bacteria and they sprayed it over San Francisco to see what the results on the population would be, you would call me crazy. But they've done that, right? Like it's public knowledge that they've done that, and 10 people died from the bacteria or from different symptoms that the bacteria caused in them. So it's like, things like that are true, and that's almost as crazy as this headline. But because we don't have any regard for the truth, all of them gets mixed in. And so someone that regards this as true will, or someone that doesn't, someone that correctly views this Babylon Bee article and the people that believe it as like, oh, you're stupid and not informed, are going to say, anyone saying about the actually true Operation Sea Spray are going to say, oh, there must be one of those Republicans that doesn't actually read the article and they probably saw it from some satire website, right? And that's the problem. Anyways, beating that to death, but I don't have any more on this if you don't.
No, yeah, no, you can hit the nail on the head there.
Beautiful.
Can't make that stuff up.
You can't make that stuff up. Unless you're the Babylon Bee. Okay, folks, thanks for hanging out with us and listening. We really appreciate your time. We love any sort of feedback that you might have on the show, so feel free to message us on Instagram or Twitter or anywhere that we've got social media. You can find us at CringePostPod or at cringepost.com. And again, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe our stuff. It really helps us out. Until next time.